Ваше превосходительство,
Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, friends, fellow scientists, I'm glad to welcome all of you here at the opening of the 15th International Conference of Africanists, called Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. We were to hold this conference last year, so that it could be timed to the 60th anniversary of the Year of Africa, but the pandemic ruined our plans. We hoped to hold this conference this year offline, but unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have such an opportunity. We decided to hold that online, and today I'd like to welcome all the participants to this conference, all the guests. I do think that we can look forward to a very interesting scientific and practical discussion. Following the tradition, let me pass the floor to Honorary Director of the Institute for African Studies, Mr. Vasiliev, who headed our institute much longer than any other director for 23 years. And I do think that that's great that he will be the one to inaugurate, to open our conference. Over to you, Mr. Vasiliev. Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today we are present at the festival or festivity of Africanists, and one part of the world of African continent belongs to the Arab world, but present today are representatives of all the continents of the world except for the Antarctic. And I do think that we'll have more than 500 participants in this conference. That's a very rare occasion in the world, and this is one of the biggest conferences for Russia. I'm sure that would be a very bright exchange of views, points of view, so we'll see confrontation of views. We'll try to address most acute problems, we'll develop new approaches to African studies. Still, everyone who is participating in that conference, these are either professional Africanists or probably some public, political actors or businessmen who value very much the destiny of Africa. Among the participants in this conference are the ones who champion and celebrate the success attained by Africa, who celebrate the fact that Africa is actually going up the bar and level, and certainly they sympathize with the failures which are typical of the transition period and the problems run into by the continent. I'm sure that these things will help our participants to exchange their views on all the questions related to that continent, starting from today to some historical views, starting from economic problems and ending with cultural issues, ranging from interesting questions of environment and ethnic studies and civilization development to how Africa is trying to get out of the pandemic and how it gets out of that difficult situation. We, the Russian Africanists, certainly celebrated that after so many difficult years in the history, I mean 1990s and early nought years, Russia is back to Africa. Russia is now working in the best interests of the African continent and its own ones. Our interests certainly coincide on the most important areas. I'm confident that we will find some new ideas, and they would be certainly very interesting both for Africa and for the whole global community of Africanists. I wish everyone success, fruitful work, and nice discussions. Thank you so much, Mr. Vasilyev. Thank you for your words of welcome. And before we proceed with the video addresses, I'd like to introduce to you the participants in our today's discussion, the ones who managed to come here and to be present on site. For us, that's an honored privilege to have these people offline. From my right-hand side, I'd like to introduce to Mr. Bogdanov, Special Representative of the President of the Russian Federation for the Middle East and Africa, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. Natalia Bocharova, Deputy Minister of Science and Higher Education of the Russian Federation. Alexander Sultanov, Chair of the Association of the Economic Cooperation with African Nations, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary. His Excellency, Mr. Pabasale Mohammed, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Cameroon to the Russian Federation, Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps. My name is Irina Abramova, Director of the Russian African Studies Institute for African Studies. On my left-hand side is Mr. Morozov, Senator from the Council of Federation and Chairman of the Coordination Committee on Economic Cooperation with African countries. Mr. Vasilyev already took the floor, and he's honorary president of the RAS Institute. Mr. Baleg is Vice President of the Russian Academy of Sciences, who is in charge of the international activity of our Academy. And I'd like to thank all the participants present on site, offline, for their attention to the development of the Russian-African relations. Saying that, I'd like to ask our technicians to show video addresses. Deputy Chairman of the Russian Federation of the Federal Council of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, Konstantin Kosachev. Please. First of all, I'd like to welcome the participants in the 15th session Conference of Africanists dedicated to destinies of Africa in the modern world. These destinies have never been easy, but this traditional problem has been exacerbated by the common challenge, the COVID-19, the new pandemic. On the days of such hardships, it's very important to feel a hand of your friend on your shoulder, and the people of Africa have always witnessed that Russia is ready to support their partners and friends on all the continents. Despite the fact that Russia is now under unprecedented economic sanctions imposed by the West, actually contrary to the appeal by the Secretary General of the United Nations to avoid such sanctions amid the pandemic, but no sanctions would undermine our solidarity with Africa, which was showcased at the very first summit meeting, Russia-Africa, which took place 2 years ago in Sochi. Then many said that Russia is now back to Africa. I would say that Russia has never left Africa. We retained our cultural, economic, and scientific ties. Still, we receive a lot of African students, and in my personal capacity, I must say that a dialogue along the parliamentary lines also evolved quite actively. But until today, our capacities and opportunities were limited and restricted. We have more than enough problems now. But a dialogue with Africa is a dialogue aimed at the future of our civilization. The role of that continent would go up ever since. Therefore, we attach great importance to the second summit meeting between Russia and Africa, which is scheduled for 2022. It has to be not only a hallmark event to consolidate and strengthen the results achieved actually during the first summit meeting, but also pave the way as a roadmap. Another hallmark event will take place in the year 2022. I mean, in Interreligious Dialogue Conference, which was initiated by Ms. Matvienko, Speaker of the Council of Federation of the Russian Federation, and supported by several resolutions of the Security Council. It will be held on 16th through 18th May 2022 in St. Petersburg. And certainly, we're looking forward to see our high-ranking officials from Africa, parliamentaries, MPs, religious actors. We are confident that African peoples with their dire destiny, people who overcome the colonial legacy will contribute dramatically to the results of that conference to achieve the most important result, saying that a dialogue rather than confrontation should play a pivotal role in the destiny of the mankind, so that actually our civilization is inclusive and fair. Once again, let me extend my warmest wishes to the organizers and participants in the 15th Conference of Africanists. We in the Council of Federation are always open to fruitful cooperation with your influential community. Farewell. And saying that, I would like to pass the floor for a video address to Ms. Saranbi Anyang Agbor, Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology at the African Union Commission. Over to you.
Your Excellencies, esteemed participants of this 15th International African Studies Conference, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you are in the globe. I am honored to participate at this 15th International African Studies Conference under the theme, Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. This conference comes under exceptional circumstances, as most countries reel from the challenge occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have faced the greatest education disruption of our time, affecting the lives of students, teachers, and the entire educational community, particularly because before COVID, we already had our issues. Reading the program document that was shared for this conference, I must admit, being a bit surprised by the nomenclature of the Institute for African Studies, Scientific Council for the Problems of Africa. Not Africa from a problematic perspective. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the education sector has been among the sectors most affected as countries put in place measures to contain the spread of COVID-19. I am happy that through this 15th International Conference of Africanists on Destinies of Africa in the Modern World, we are also setting to scale new heights in the collaboration between Russia and Africa across several facets of development. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, this will undoubtedly have a critical knock-on impact. It will have a critical knock-on impact on sustainable development and poverty reduction in Africa, particularly if our education is education for sustainable development. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 has impressed upon us the urgent need to rethink and re-engineer innovative learning methods and strategies that enable teaching and learning without the need for physical presence. open, distance, and e-learning models have become part of the unassailable architecture of accessible, quality, and relevant education and training provision. And that is why in the African Union, we have the Pan-African Virtual and E-University, the e-learning arm of the Pan-African University Institutes. As institutions move forward in this new normal, doing business as unusual, we need to be fundamentally engaged in reviewing of the very purpose of education in a more digitally enabled, complex, and fast-changing world. This 15th International African Studies Conference, with the theme, Destinies of Africa in the Modern World, has come at a very important time. So we say lasting gratitude to the Russian government and the Russian Academy of Sciences for organizing this 15th International African Studies Conference. We hope that together we can change the paradigm and achieve the vision of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And as we say in the recognized languages of the African Union, merci beaucoup, obrigado, shukran, thank you, gracias.
I think that for our further discussion, we'll again discuss what our two previous speakers highlighted, because really they touched upon very important topics which may contribute to the development of our relations. And saying that, I'd like to pass the floor to Olga Timofeeva, Deputy Chairwoman of the State Duma of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation. Over to you. Dear participants of that conference, dear colleagues, let me welcome you on behalf of our big family of MPs, on behalf of Mr. Volodin, our speaker. I'm glad to say that almost 500 participants are brought together by this conference, and we'll speak about economic, humanitarian, and other issues, but we have to translate that into practical language so that we could be of real help for the African continent. Russia openly says that after a decade of cooling relations, we are reopening Africa as a continent. Africa is now our priority. Under the Soviet Union rule, thousands of African students were enrolled to the Soviet universities, and many Soviet experts were operational in Africa. We lost that legacy. Now we are catching up with that. Let me note that my father was a pilot of the civil aviation carrying cargo to Djibouti, and we take pride in remembering these years of his work. And back to the parliamentary agenda, in 2018-2019, Moscow organized big parliamentary fora, including Russian-Africa conferences, and the interest to these conferences was enormous. There were lots of African delegations headed by speakers or vice speakers. It has become a precursor to an unprecedented summit at the top level and economic forum, which took place in Sochi in 2019. I took part in that my own, and I saw that Russia showed a lot of interest to Africa and vice versa. The pandemic, unfortunately, introduced its amendments, and online meetings are not possible, but still we have some parliamentary groups within the Federal Assembly, and within our core committee, we are extending the scope of that conferences because we have a broader range of questions to cover. We are focusing on intervention in the area of healthcare. We're speaking about interaction in the area of agriculture, and certainly we also are overseeing our humanitarian ties. There is a full panoply of issues which we can cover. Still, Africa is home to several hotbeds of armed conflicts. This is something which we have to speak about. We have to reconcile and streamline our legislation there of fighting against extremism and terrorism. We have to avoid double taxation for business. We have to give certain preferences to the business once it works on the other continent. We have to ensure the safety. But let me reiterate what Mr. Putin says. Africa has to select its own ways for development. We rely on the fruitful cooperation, and the State Duma will always be your partner. Thank you so much for your attention.
And now, after a couple of video addresses that have mentioned and outlined our further work, I would like to give floor to Mr. Bogdanov, who is here with us. Mikhail Bogdanov is a special representative of the President of the Russian Federation for the Middle East and Africa, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. Mikhail has done a lot for Russia-African relationship development, and I'm happy that he is here with us. And over to you, Mikhail. Well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, participants, happy to welcome you to the 15th African Conference. First of all, I would like to thank the Academy of Science of the Russian Federation for the invitation, for this opportunity, and I would like to express my gratitude to Irina Abramova, the director of this institute. So it is thanks to her that we are all here. On the 25th of May, we'll be celebrating the Day of Africa, and Mr. Putin, President Putin, has sent a message to all who is going to celebrate this day. He says in his message that a lot is going on at the moment on African continent and in the area of cooperation with other countries. As for Russian-African relationship, it has a long history, ever since the independence wars, when everything was just beginning. Our country has done a lot in terms of decolonization of Africa, and now we can see new developments, and our cooperation is improving. The President of the Russian Federation says that Africa is one of the priorities for us, and the first Russia-Africa summit in Sochi 2 years ago has set the way forward for all of us. And now we can work in our dialogue in humanitarian, educational, and other areas. We need to seize this opportunity and keep improving our relationship and cooperation with our African countries, friends, and partners. We intend to move forward together. And it's true not only for traditional areas, but of other things that are in demand. We are happy to work together. We are happy to bridge the gap and help Africa get what it needs. It will be beneficial for both of the parties. The next summit, Russia-Africa, will take place in one of the African countries in 2022. We have several councils in place in other organizations that work with our African partners and friends. We are working together in scientific, innovative, technological, and other areas. We are in it together. We intend to strengthen our ties. We intend to improve the situation in different areas. We intend to improve the education for young people, renew traditions, and quite recently there was a conference devoted to cooperation with African countries. And in TASS here, a number of events also took place, as well as in one of the academies of the Russian Federation. We rely a great deal on our scientists, politicians, economists, in preparation for the next second summit, Russia-Africa. We intend to strengthen our ties with African countries, and it means a lot to us. On our part, we'd be happy to share our experience that we've accumulated. To us, such synergy will result in new approaches and new developments. So I wish all of you interesting discussions and all the best. Thank you. Thank you, Mikhail. Thank you for warm words. Thank you for the assessment of our activity, what our institute has done. Thank you for pointing out and stressing the significance of the Russia-African relationship. Now I'd like to give floor to our next speaker, Natalia Bocharova, Deputy Minister of Science and Higher Education of the Russian Federation. I'm sure you now already understand that science and education is one of the most important areas and directions that we need to move forward to. So Natalia is the person who knows a lot about that, and she will talk more about the further developments in this area. So Natalia, dear Irina, dear participants of this conference, dear guests, on behalf of the ministry, I would like to welcome you to this conference, and I would like to congratulate and thank the organizers and Ms. Abramova, personally you and the Russian Academy of Science and all the participants of today's event. Congratulations and thank you for high-quality organization and preparation of this event. And I'm sure that the discussions that we're going to have in the next 3 days are going to be very fruitful. Tomorrow is a great day, Africa's Day, and I don't want to be official. I think that the recent developments and the current situation makes us think. We need to think about humanity. We need to think about respect, aid, help. We know that Africa is a very interesting continent. It is rich in beautiful places, in natural resources. But the question is everyone prepared to help Africa? Is everyone ready to help Africa develop? I think it's not by chance that the organizers decided to choose this particular name for this conference, Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. I would like to deviate a little bit and say that when several years ago I was working with the UN, I visited the continent, the African continent, and it allowed me to see the situation from the inside. I think it's the place where you can go for vacation, to relax. As a tourist, it's quite interesting. As I said, there are plenty of natural resources, minerals, but when you dig deeper, when you see what's actually happening there in terms of politics, that there are some disruptions that prevent some countries from developing any further, it makes you really think about the destiny of this or that country. So what can we do? How can we help to soften the blow? And how can we help economies of the African continent? We always think that Africa is a rich continent. At the same time, we see that poverty is all over the continent. There are some problems and issues that we are going to devote a lot of time to during these 3 days. And in particular, we'll be talking about potable water and accessibility, infrastructure, and many other issues that prevent Africa from creating production lines, reduce social pressure, get rid of social problems, and many other issues. And of course, unemployment is another big issue. So I would like to wish you and all the participants a very fruitful conference. And Ms. Abramova, I really look forward to these 3 days because I'm sure we'll be able to hear more about humanitarian priorities and what the Ministry of Education and Science can do. Speaking about higher education priorities and education in general, I think It has to be a priority for us to focus on something that can help develop African economies and could help form the elite for sustainable development on the continent. I'm sure you know that Russian government focuses a lot on science and education on the African continent as well. And on a continuous basis, we are entertaining the idea of quotes free of charge for students from African countries. We know that there are a lot of graduates from the African continent that have graduated from Russian institutes and universities. For example, as of today, as for higher education programs, as of 1st of October, that's our reporting date for 2020, Russian Federation, we have 27,000+ students from African countries. Of them, thanks to the Russian budget, we have 5,000+ students. So we'd be happy to expand those programs. As Madam Commissaire from African Union mentioned, we need to think a lot, and we need to revisit what we currently have in our universities and institutes, taking into account pandemic and taking into account the remoteness. It's not offline anymore, it's online. So it is possible to use digital platforms. And in this regard, we are actively working on the Russian-African net or digital, if you like, university. And for that, we intend to engage our specialized leading organizations. And I don't want to sound too general, but as of today, we have already looked into that and we've started this work. So the Southern Federal University, as one of the biggest ones, is going to be part of this. The university from Crimea and other universities across our countries, for example, Technology and Design Institute, all of them would be happy to join this process and develop educational programs with the help of their teachers and specialists. And what matters to us is this. We really welcome this idea of having a digital university, an online format. It helps us save a lot of money because people don't have to travel that far. They can learn online, remotely from their home, so we can cut costs related to education. Actually, what we plan to do is to try and launch the first program in such format till the end of this year. It's going to be a pilot project, but we're going to do that together with some countries, not all of them. So depending on the outcome, and I hope there'll be a lot of appetite for that, depending on the interest on part of African countries, we are going to expand and invite more participants. And the first summit that took place in Sochi, I think it brought us closer. We now can communicate and use one language. We can hear each other, we can listen to each other. And what the Ministry of Education and Science is currently doing, it's not only about getting ready for the second summit in 2022. It also has to do with something that is deep in our heart. Historically, we've been helping African students discover new languages, knowledge, cultures, and Russian culture, and helping them develop at the same time. This is our goal. This is what we want. And this is what we want within the framework of the initiatives that we are currently developing. And we think that this is one of the main goals. And it is good that many African students don't lose touch with their Russian counterparts in universities. For example, the Institute of Asia and Africa is the alma mater. And I'm really happy that all the graduates keep in touch. They meet on a regular basis, and they feel really good about Russia, its cultures, traditions. Really happy to see all that. And in conclusion, I would like to wish all of you, online, offline participants of this conference, I wish you all the best. Stay healthy. This is one of the most important things. And once again, I stress our educational and humanitarian interaction has really fruitful outcomes. So once again, thank you to the organizers for this event. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you very much. This has been really valuable. It's not only about what you mentioned, what you are doing, what you are working on. It was really great to hear some particular specific numbers and specific steps, what we need to do. I think that's what our African colleagues are interested in. It's not only words, it's something visible, it's something material. So thank you very much. Thank you for this information. And I'm sure that this online university, if it succeeds, then it'll be a good promotion tool, and we'll be able to promote the Russian educational trend, and it will help us form the elites that will do a lot in the future. So, of course, it is very much dependent on the strategy of this or that African country, what they plan, what they see. But all of this has been really valuable and interesting. Thank you very much. So now I would like to give floor to our next speaker, Veronika Nikishina. She's the CEO of the Russian Expert Center. And the Russian Expert Center has been very active in their work with and cooperation with African countries. And I'm sure that Veronika is going to tell us more. Do share your thoughts and ideas with us, Veronika. Over to you. Good morning, Ms. Abramova. Good morning, dear participants of this conference. Indeed, for export from Russia, African continent is, well, if it's not a priority, it's one of the priorities, one of the most promising destinations. We've been investing, we've been building, we've been doing a lot in this area. So we have a long-standing positive image of the African continent, and we have a very positive impression. But past is the past. We need to think about the future, and we need to have an economic strategy, and it must be beneficial for both parties, and it must be with must come together with material and visible results. As for total export last year, it amounted to $4.1 billion, which is 29% higher than in 2019. At the same time, I must mention that actually all the deliveries amount to 4.5 billion. Well, not everything is specified and included in statistics because sometimes some products are delivered through Latvia or United Arab Emirates. At the same time, despite pandemic and despite the really difficult year 2020, despite all that, Russia has been actively exporting goods to Africa. And I'm talking about goods that were in demand, perhaps in higher demand than in 2019. But these numbers are nowhere near our ambitions and our goals, so there's still a lot to be done. And as for Russian exporters, we want to go to Morocco, Algeria, Nigeria, Southern African Republic, Egypt, and business from these countries are very much interested in the financial tools that Russian exports has. As for non-financial services, looking for foreign customers, for example, looking for partners, Russian companies are very much interested in entering Kenyan, Ethiopian, Western African, Nigerian, Cote d'Ivoire markets, so on and so forth.
Most frequently, we get requests for finding contractors on the mineral fertilizers, food processing, and petrochemistry. At the moment, we are considering a number of infrastructural projects on providing equipment for HPPs to Ethiopia and Kenya, building a railroad in one of the Central African nations. In the portfolio, we also have some projects of supplying Russian automotive products to Nigeria, Ghana. Also, we are considering a project of supplying railway equipment to a number of Central African nations. We are considering to supply food products, fish and fish products, pork, turkey to Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. Also, we are supporting the Russian companies in the process of negotiations with the potential counterparties, with the representatives of the retailers on supplies of confectionery to Congo, to the Republic of Congo, to Angola. Also, petrochemical products are about to be supported Benin and South Africa. All in all, in our portfolio, we have 26 major projects embracing 18 African nations. And this portfolio may be estimated at $200 million in the upcoming several years. It's obvious that our mandate doesn't allow us to fund these projects for free, but it means that we have to return the investments to some extent, but all the tools and instruments which are available for us and the ones which we offer to the Russian government would be at reduced rates, at reduced prices, very convenient for the African nations, for the exporters, for the importers. The tools which are aimed at win-win situation. We have opened 4 trade offices in Africa, 3 of them allocated in the northern part of Africa, Egypt, Morocco, and Algeria. One is located in the sub-Sahara region. But in order to interact more broadly with the sub-Saharan region, we are working with Россотрудничество, with a network of the Russian embassies. We have agreed on the joint use of our infrastructure and our tools. Also, we have such a tool of promoting our products as pavilions of the Russian food products in different African nations. The 4th such pavilion is to be open in Egypt, and we're getting applications from the exporters who are eager to exhibit their products there. At the moment, as I said, these things are not totally satisfactory in order to meet the demand which does exist there and to bring into consideration all the capacity offered by the Russian exporters. We will contribute to the arranging of Russian Africa Summit in 2022. We're arranging business matching, some exhibitions, training seminars, teaching people how to do business in Africa. Let me reiterate to conclude my remarks that the American market is very important and interesting for the Russian stakeholders, and will support the Russian companies there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Veronica. That's a very specific and very practical contribution with projects, and Celia was impressed very much. with the fact that the Russian Expert Center has already 26 projects on 16 countries of Africa. I hope that this is only the beginning of our interaction with African nations. And there would be many more such projects. Certainly, we'd like to extend the scope of our cooperation. I think that this is one of our major disadvantages, meaning that we're focusing on the northern parts of Africa, South Africa, and some of big countries such as Nigeria. I think that we have to develop our relations with all the African nations, setting certain priorities, certainly. But I understand that the Russian Expert Center in Russia are ready to cooperate with all the countries of the continent. So thank you so much. Saying that, I'm ready to pass the floor, and this is a big privilege for me to pass the floor to His Excellency, the doyen of the African diplomatic corps, Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Cameroon to the Russian Federation, Mr. Paba Saleh Mohammed. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you so much, Madame Abramova. I'm very happy to attend this conference. This conference brought together the efforts of lots of Africanists, intellectual and economic efforts, scientific inputs, and especially we value very much the efforts extended by our Russian colleagues. The topic of the conference is extremely important. We regarded that as a continuation of the line which was set 2 years ago at the Russian African Summit. At that summit meeting, we set the foundations of the new relations between such a great country as Russia and the African nations. New foundations for cooperation were laid at that summit, and with the blessing of our political authorities, with a blessing from the wide range business circles, Africa joined that work, the political and economic work. In the area of scientific work, many new projects were launched. We gave a new impetus to that cooperation. On the eve of the second summit, which will be held in 2022, today it becomes obvious that we have to do a very serious preparatory work, which will help us to define the most interesting areas for our joint work in the areas of economy, science, and education. In that respect, let me reiterate that Africa is not forgetful of the dramatic role played by the Soviet Union at the time. Then we used to say that actually many meetings of the Cabinet of Ministers in Africa would be held in Russian. That's a good token of the role played by Russia, as the Soviet Union then trained thousands and thousands of experts and professionals for our economy. And Her Excellency, Ms. Minister, told us about some achievements in the area of education. Many more African students are coming to Russia to study because the reputation of the Russian academia and schools do not need any proof. Well, Many our professionals in the area of physics and IT technologies, they got their education here in Russia. Many of them left for the United States to work for the major companies. Many of them got back to our country, but still the level of their competence is very high. We have to actually follow the way which we have paved, because this is what Africa needs, this is what Russia needs. It will help us to strengthen the Russian image in Africa. Thank you so much. Your Excellency, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much for these your words, and really that's a very interesting contribution. You said that the councils of ministers meetings were held in Russian. That is really true, and I can remember figures. Until the USSR was still intact, did not disintegrate, I think that we trained 500,000 specialists, and more than 250,000 of them were trained on site in Africa. The Russian education was very much popular in Africa. Despite some of the tendencies, the alumni from the Russian and Soviet universities still are taking high-ranking positions in the executive and legislative power. I can remember that many ambassadors from Africa, they are fluent in Russian, and many of them got their education here in the Soviet Union. I do think that we have to follow that tradition, and saying that, following the tradition, and I'm shy to pass the floor over to myself, but as far as I combine the functions of a moderator and a keynote speaker, I would like to make my keynote presentation, which is called The Russian-African Relations, New Objectives and New Opportunities in the Changing World. It's much easier for me to make my pitch as I'm knowledgeable of the presentations of the people who know about what is going on in Africa. First-handed, they understand how we have to develop our relations with Africa, and who already highlighted some very important areas of our work. The conference is called the Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. In order to define these destinies, we have to still understand what world we are living in, what new model for the global development is cropping out nowadays. If we can dub what is going on in the world with one word, that would be the word crisis. The old model, which took place over the last 30 years or 3 decades, showed that it doesn't work in the best interest of the whole mankind. And it has become especially topical amid the pandemic of COVID-19. Instead of all the countries of the world bringing together their efforts and their tendency to fight against that problem, against that crisis, against that threat. Actually, the ideals of democracy were undermined. The resources were isolated. The ideals of democracy professed by certain countries were substituted by authoritarianism, and we saw that the human rights of all the citizens were violated immediately, including the freedom of speech, the freedom of communication, the freedom of movement. Sadly, it was caused by COVID-19, the necessity to bring about lockdown, but I actually was very much stupefied by the rate with which any person can be disconnected from its main function, the social function, that any person can very easily and quickly be disconnected from other people, from the communication. And the law was substituted with a set of rules, which were set not by the international community and not by all the countries altogether, by a certain group of the so-called golden billion, who believe that they're entitled to defining what is right and what is wrong, what countries may take certain decisions, and others have to follow what they are told and to obey. Besides, I must say that unfair competition became more pronounced in the world. More and more often we see politically driven sanctions. I believe that African nations fully understand what it is, what it means, because many of these countries, just like Russia, the Russian Federation for quite a while, were subjected to such treatment. Amid the pandemic, the number of conflicts grew, especially the armed ones. I will not list of them as far as we're limited in time, but we all understand what I mean. Another important thing is that our reality has been superseded by fake news. And this is not the reality which defines the information and the data, but this is the information coverage which is defining our reality. Hence, we may speak about cyber terrorism when some unwelcome presentations and footage would not be allowed to the public space. Conflicts grew in number, especially in the area of economy, not just between the North and the South, the West and the East, but even within these big groupings of countries. This is also quite pronounced. Look at what is going on in the EU, in the relations between the EU and the United States. There is no real interaction. There is no want and will to overcome the challenges of today. In essence, a big challenge and a threat is the one of diluting the identity, diluting and blurring the identity of everyone. We're on the way to make templates with no space for identity, for individualism, no place for people taking their own decisions. That's a very precarious ramification which concerns a man as a biological entity, and the epitome of this chaos present in today's world is the so-called the war of vaccines, something I cannot but mention. Instead of bringing our efforts and to fight against that dangerous infection, everyone is eager to take a bigger piece of cake, thinking not about the common destiny of the mankind, but thinking how to benefit from that, how to profit from that, and pocket as much money as possible. It means that the old globalization model is no longer effective, and COVID-19 is not the root cause of that. It has acted only as a trigger. It strengthened and exacerbated this process, but the crisis was looming for quite a while. What will substitute and replace the multipolar world in which we used to live? What will somehow substitute the globalization model proposed by the West? Despite of loosening the and weakening of the economic positions of the collective West, still they steer and possess of most of the political leverage and economic leverage. Many experts confer in the view that we are living in a bipolar world with the two major superpowers, the United States and China. That this is actually the picture which may be brought about, but with this is an ultimate picture Is it good for Russia and Africa? I don't think so. I think that for us, another model would be more appropriate. A polycentric world with several centers of power, which probably would not be equal in the power they possess, but which may take a decision and which could independently take some economic and political decisions. A bipolar world is diluting the agency of every entity when this or that entity has to side with this or that stakeholder. And the questions of political and economic sovereignty, which are quite important for Russia and for the African continent, find themselves in such a situation which is not purely feasible or realistic. I think that Russia and the African continent are interested in making sure that Russia and Africa are developing successfully, that they also could contribute to the development of the new regional centers in the new world order, which would be entitled to their own opinion and which take part in the decision making.
I must say that pandemic has driven us to the point where we are now in the same boat. There's huge pressure on part of those countries that managed to keep their position in the world. From the medical standpoint, the African continent didn't show that dramatic results as other countries. If we compare the numbers, then the African continent that is getting closer to 1.5 billion. As of yesterday, they have 4.8 billion of COVID-19. So it's approximately the same as in Russia, which is much smaller than the African continent. And number of deaths in the African continent is not that high. However, the threat is there. And as for social consequences that the pandemic has resulted in, economic consequences that are there, they're very serious. The thing is, the bigger part of production in African countries is the unofficial sector, and the salary would very much depend on what he or she had done today. So taking into account pandemic, we can say that African economy has suffered a great deal. Starvation is another big problem. So all those humanitarian economic problems that pandemic has brought to the African continent, they must become a priority for Russian Federation as well when we are trying to build relationship with the African continent. At the same time, pandemic, just like any other crisis, has brought new opportunities, both for Russia and for Africa. We know that at the moment in Africa, there's a concept that is being developed, and in English, it's called African ownership. It's a little bit difficult to translate into Russian, but I think it's about taking the accountability for your own development. It's not new. It goes back to Lagos and different programs, but in the context of the pandemic, it sounds and looks a bit different. So Africa is prepared to take the responsibility and accountability for the decisions it's making. So in this regard, 2063 agenda is becoming more relevant. It says that Africa has to turn into a prospering, sustainably developing territory where they respect human rights and doing everything for the development and growth, where peace, stability, safety and security, traditions and culture are preserved, where you can see new opportunities for young people, for women. All of this will help Africa to turn into a global player and reliable partner. So Along the lines of 2063 agenda, the African Union has identified very clearly what Africa needs to do. There are some frame programs, for example, full-fledged agricultural program, infrastructure development program, mining development, and what is very important for us is innovations in science development, significant growth of cross-African countries' trade, and accelerated development for Africa. Why am I talking about all of this? I'm saying this because for have a successful relationship, we need to understand what these countries need. I must say that in Russia, and as we can see, pandemic and different developments resulted in a new economic development strategy in July's decree signed by our President Putin. It's called On National Goals for 2030. It includes presence of Russia in the top 10 countries in terms of scientific developments and research. And this must be done at the expense of different systems that we have. GDP has to be above average of the global one and maintaining the global stability. Non-energy goods has to be at least 70% as compared to 2020. Digital maturity in certain areas of social and economic sectors. And we need to increase amount of investments in information technology by factor of 4. So this agenda 2063 and Russian strategy go together really well. But here we need to understand which model of our relationship is going to be the most promising for the near future. I myself was part of the summit Russia-Africa in 2019, and I saw how enthusiastic our participants from the Russian continent welcomed what they heard. Mr. Kosachev said, "We have never left African continent," but actually I saw that actually vice versa we did, and our African participants were really happy to see that we are coming back. But seems to me that summit has worded our goals, it has identified what we need to do, but now we need to get more specific. We need specific tools, mechanisms, concrete projects. We've said quite a lot already this morning. And after my report, I'm sure other participants will support this. But we scientists, we need to understand what this model is going to be like. And I'm thinking about Vladimir Lenin's words. When we need to make a very important decision, we need to find the link, this string that we can pull and get it all sorted. So I think that's the model that we need to see. And this model that we're going to have between Russia and Africa doesn't have to be a trading model only. We have a lot that can be done. There are a lot of options. Russia, African export, for example, to Russia and vice versa. And I think it's very feasible. We can expand Russian export to Africa, but perhaps it doesn't have to be financial model either, because you can't compare this with other countries, with China, for example, because they invest a lot. They give unbelievable loans to the African continent. So what model are we talking about? What could it be? I think we could have called it technological and humanitarian model. Speaking about export of Russian technology, if you ask any participant of any event, participant from Africa, if you ask him or her, what do you expect to see? They would probably say that technology would be key, because first comes technology, the rest would follow. Trading, export of services, preparation and training of personnel who are going to deal with Russian methodology, technology. This will expand our opportunities, our options, and we'll be able to implement our strategic goals as well, which is quite material. Quite recently, one journalist, when I was saying this, he asked me a question. What technology does Russia actually have? What is it that we can give Africa that China and European countries can't? The most peculiar thing is that today in Africa, they have several priorities: education, healthcare, this is one of the most important ones, infrastructure, energy, digitalization. And I assure you that Russia has a lot of developments. And I'm sure my colleague Yuri Balega, who's going to talk later about this more, he would support me. We can do a lot. We can offer quite a lot to the African countries. And in this regard, Russia will become something new. It's not always good to use something that you had in the past. Yes, the Soviet Union has done a lot for the African continent. However, we need to carry on. We need to keep working and offer something new, something modern. And I think that export of Russian technology and interaction in high-tech sphere will help us to make another step forward and enhance our cooperation. And Russia is not hiding its technology. Take vaccine, healthcare, which is a priority for everyone. Have a look. 4 vaccines in the Russian Federation. Isn't it a technology? It's high-tech. And first of all, it's targeted at every citizen's health. That is why it is of utmost importance. As for agriculture, we have a lot of technology. We can offer quite a lot. I'm not talking about nuclear technology. And I just got a message that there are certain problems and disruptions with electricity in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That is why we don't know whether our colleagues from Congo would be able to join us, but I see that they would be able to join us. But 50% of African population doesn't have access to electricity. Is this normal? And I'm sure that Russian technology would be able to play a bigger role here. And in conclusion, I would like to say that when we are implementing something, when we're developing something, we need not forget about every single person, because Soviet policy, Russian policy has always focused on the people, on a single person. It's always about an individual. So I think this can be one of the pillars, one of the milestones. This is the string that we can pull and get it all sorted. So once again, I'm happy to see and welcome all the participants of this conference. I invite you to enter discussions that we're going to have. And before I give floor to our colleague from Kinshasa, I would like to thank all the organizers for this opportunity. This is a mixed format, but nevertheless, it allowed us to meet, to hear each other, and it helps a lot of people in Africa and in Russia. This is a really good event. And now I would like to give floor to our next speaker. This is going to be A speaker from Congo. Congo is presently chairing the African Union. So Jean-Michel Kumbu, rector of the Free University of Kinshasa, over to you.
Вы с нами на связи?
Are you there? Are you online?
Простите, может быть, переводчики, я, к сожалению, не говорю по-французски, мы не слышим.
Unfortunately, I don't speak French, but perhaps our interpreters could help us. Is someone there? I'm right here. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. I apologize for the delay. It had to do with some technical issues that we had. I really hope that we'd be able to catch up with our agenda. You're absolutely right. My name is Jean-Michel Kumbu. I'm a professor and the rector of the Free University of Kinshasa.
Je tiens à remercier, au nom de l'université, l'ambassade de la Fédération de Russie en République
I'm
démocratique.
based in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the capital, Kinshasa. I would like to thank the embassy of the Democratic Republic of Congo in Moscow for organizing this plenary session and for, once again, this opportunity. So, Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. That's the theme, that's the topic of our event.
D'abord, d'une université privée qui est déjà en partenariat avec la Russie. Et quand entendu...
Our activity is done on the basis of the Congo University, and Russia has a long-standing relationship with us. We've been working together with the Russian Federation on a number of bilateral programs, and we have multilateral programs and projects as well. As a country that is currently chairing the African Union with the participation of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Dans l'agenda du prochain sommet Russie-Afrique en 2022. En effet, la Russie n'est pas...
We will be participating in preparation process for the second Russia-Africa summit, and really hope, and we need to understand that this is not going to be a purely political event. We really hope that the Russian Federation is going to help us promote science and education.
Avec la Russie dans le domaine de l'éducation.
The partnership between two of our countries already exists. We are doing quite a lot together in educational area. We have a number of educational programs and projects. Unfortunately, we were unable to participate in a summit for teachers that took place quite recently. That was due to pandemic. But as for the Moscow State University of International Relations, we've been working with this particular university. We've been working with a number of departments. We've been doing quite a lot. We have a lot of students who are interested in international relations and many other areas. So we have a long-standing history of relationships. So we're doing the best we can, and we are promoting the agenda that we have developed together. And I really hope that this project will continue. One of the key areas for our cooperation is training of our teachers and professors. We are organizing different courses, trainings for our teachers working in different institutes and universities.
leur cycle post.
Advanced trainings, and young teachers can take such programs and trainings.
La possibilité de l'octroi des bourses locales
Universities, and some of them are able to study in Russia.
ou encore
We also have scholarships, and we intend to expand this program.
tout en travaillant dans leurs universités
And
d'avoir des possibilités
once again, we have scholarships that would allow young teachers to
de courte période
continue their work in the universities and
de rassembler les sources documentaires
to develop further.
In the course of 2 to 3 months, they may be entitled to internships, to work online and offline with the documents, to work in the libraries.
Je plaide pour
Now I'm speaking about the future of Africa.
davantage pour l'université libre de
I'm
Kinshasa.
confident about the future of my nation,
3 mois. Surtout que ce point est inscrit
the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and I became the rector of the Free University of Kinshasa 3 months ago. I'm confident that our country and our university will take full part in this project. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak up. I hope that I stuck to time
Je vous remercie.
limit. Thank you, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Professor, esteemed Mr. Kumbu, for your contribution. Saying that, I'd like to invite Yuri Volega, Vice President of the Russian Academy of Sciences, RAS, full member, to share his views on what I think about how we can develop a model of interaction between Africa and Russia as a humanitarian model. What do you think about that? Dear participants in that conference, and Ms. Abramova, thank you so much for the opportunity to take part in the plenary session of the 15th Conference of Africanists. Let me tell you that the Russian Academy of Sciences, as well as the Soviet Academy of Sciences, has a very long history of cultural relations and very fruitful relations with Africa. We signed dozens of agreements between our institutes as constituent parts of the Soviet Academy of Sciences and African Institutes. Let me draw several examples to name a few. Name a few of them. Quite recently, we signed a memorandum of understanding between the Russian Academy of Sciences and South Africa on agricultural studies, on space discovery, an agreement with the National Academy of Madagascar, an agreement with the Academy on Scientific Research and Technologies of Egypt. Many other agreements were signed. We also drafted an agreement with the African Union, which probably will be signed in the upcoming 6 months. Several examples. And let me address your question about the psychological model. We are fruitfully cooperating with several nations, including Ethiopia. Ethiopia, this is our long-standing scientific partner. Back in 1987, the Soviet Academy of Sciences organized for a joint biological expedition. At the moment, we are being guided by the 2 protocols, 2 agreements, which embrace a big scope of work on studying biological resources of Ethiopia, setting up scientific foundations of product, training high-skilled professionals. Among the most successful results, we are working with zoonotic diseases, preparing the soil, employing high-tech technologies in agriculture. Breeding fish is very important for food security. All in all, Ethiopia, this is a center of biodiversity for the whole of the African continent. And Nicholas Vavilov, and this is where actually the origins of the plant's immunity can be found. 2 years ago, at the summit meeting between Russia and Africa, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Mr. Ali Ahmed, once again reiterated the interest of Ethiopia in setting up a standing committee for biological diversity, and such a center was support to this idea was supported by Mr. Putin, the Russian president. Very soon, this center would be set up. Ethiopia will set a building, and Russia will offer specialists and equipment for that. Another country we are working with quite successfully is Uganda. And again, we are working on biology and agriculture. I'd like to note the development of new innovative technologies, production of the specialized food products for children based on the traditional. And we are updating the soil maps for Uganda, assessing the resource potential of these soils. And in the area of healthcare, for instance, we are monitoring and developing the food support for children. To optimize the nourishment, something which is very important for this country. In the area of chemistry and metalworks, we are jointly developing the processing of polymetallic ores, focusing on the ferrous and non-ferrous metals. Let me highlight our cooperation with South Africa. We are drafting an agreement on the scientific cooperation between the Russian Academy of Sciences and the Academy of Sciences of South Africa. And the roadmap of certain events are being drafted. There are lots of other events. I will not abuse your attention. In terms of physical science, we're speaking about spectroscopy, quantum sensors based on the diamonds, and lots of institutions being involved. Energy, power generation, that's very important for Africa, and we are cooperating very fruitfully with a number of academia. And the roadmap is implying a whole range of initiatives, soils, petrography, mineral studies, geochemistry. All these areas of scientific cooperation are being involved and evolve quite fruitfully. I cannot but mention that for many years we are cooperating fruitfully in terms of astrophysics in South Africa, in the southern part. We have one of the biggest telescopes, which is called South African Large Telescope, which was being built with the Russian input. The mirror for that was made using high technologies in the city of Litkarino next to Moscow. And SKA, 1 kilometer of grids were made. Part of such grids would be located in Australia and in South Africa, and Russia will make its input to the two. These are the state-of-the-art technologies. Quite recently, we got an image of a black hole in Kenya. So it involved big data and infrared technologies. That's good that these sciences are being promoted in Africa as well. I'd like to conclude my brief remarks saying the following. In my opinion, in order to develop Africa, we have to bet on, and this has been said more than once, we have to bet on the most important objective, development of science and education. No investment into one industry or infrastructure in Africa even not the arms supplies. Most important thing is to make sure that Africa could evolve independently. To this end, we need trained engineers, scientists, people of culture, people who will change the image and the style of the development of these countries and making an impetus on the way to develop. Our country has always played an important role there. I do believe that this is the most important area for our cooperation. And finally, the Russian Academy of Sciences and the Council on International Cooperation, end of this year, will hold a special session engaging all potential participants on the African studies, on the African problems and other areas of cooperation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Balega. In my opinion, what you have said is very important, especially for Russia. African market is quite young. The average age in Africa is 19 and a half years, and we know that from modern technologies, the most susceptible audience for that, these are the youth. So it means that Africa will account for about 50% of the young people of the whole world, and they are the main consumers of these technologies. On the other hand, for us, for Russia, in order to make our strategy come true, we need the market and the technologies which we have in Russia and which we spread in Russia. Actually, our market is mature, is fed up with the technologies, but the African market grows at a pace 3 times higher than all over the world, than the world average. It can become a test polygon, test site for the Russian technologies, and certainly it will support our domestic development. In that sense, the African continent and this area of the Russian-African cooperation cannot be overestimated. We are waiting until the Vice Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo joins us. He's not there. Let me follow the list. I understand that Mr. Gruzdev, Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade, will connect to us a bit later. Yes, good afternoon. I apologize for interrupting you. So, Mr. Gruzdev will join us in 5 minutes. I think that will pass the floor to Evgeny Primakov, head of Россотрудничества, head of the Public Council of the RAPF Secretariat. Mr. Primakov, are you with us? Mr. Primakov. I cannot hear him. He's inaudible. So I think that will pass the floor to Igor Morozov, Senator of the Russian Federation, Chairman of the Convention Committee on Economic Cooperation with African Countries. It's called AFROCOM. Igor, tell us what you think about the technological cooperation model. Thank you so much. Today, we're speaking about the models of how the Russian business and the Russian community can take a stronghold in Africa, may enter or accede to the African market. For more than a decade, the United States, India, and China are already operational there, along with the strongest and biggest economies of the world and other stakeholders. Therefore, we realize that the Russian mid-sized business, high-tech business, acceding to the African continent won't be easy. Therefore, AFRICOM is working through its network entities to make sure that this really happens, and we discover and consider different models of acceding to the African continent. AFRICOM has set up a center for supporting the Russian entrepreneurship in Uganda as the very first model of regional business acceding to Africa. Today, this center is in touch with a business mission which has already been shaped, so that every businessman who comes from the Russian regions, and we have 8 regions and 20 export-driven or export-oriented enterprises, already are eager to come to Africa, and they are going to work with the local counterparts. No single trip or business mission actually cannot be fruitless. We just don't have time to be complacent or to waste it. Every country with the Center for the Russian Business Support, with the Trade House, with the strong points for the Russian business to grow, they would be accompanied with the Russian language courses, with other training courses. It will be done by Россотрудничество so that we could train the elites, the future elites in the universities on the professions which are demanded for in the African market. Primarily, this can be done for the Russian enterprises which are already operational in Africa. We'll bring together the humanitarian model with the economic one, with the commercial one, combine that with the localization of the production. It will give us a synergy in order to help this model materialize. For the sake of our business, we have to create necessary conditions that they are competitive in Africa. As far as the EU and the United States already have their own preferential treatment or most preferred nation regimen, it means that we will not find it easy to compete against them, despite the fact that the products of our regional stakeholders are highly competitive. The Parliament of Russia, the Russian government, have to work intensively there. Intergovernmental commissions have to go on working bilaterally to set up free trade zones. We have to work actively on signing agreements, on promoting investments and protecting capital investments. This question will arise in the foreseeable future as soon as the Russian business flows into Africa. No doubt, we have to make sure that we strengthen our legislation and legal framework, that the system of public support is more large-scale, competitive, and accessible for the Russian regional exporters. Here we see a missing link, the direct investment fund. And we mentioned that more than once, starting from the summit meeting in Sochi. Such a fund would be very much demanded for. Therefore, during the parliamentary hearings and sessions in different committees, the Foreign Policy Committee, we took such a decision, and it was summoned as it was submitted as a recommendation for the consideration of the Russian government. We are living in a digital world, and digital transformation is embracing not only the Russian Federation, but also the African nations. Therefore, we are working with our leading companies which are promoting digital technologies, and no doubt the Russian technologies, IT technologies, as well as the Russian-made software in banks, which are very conservative institutions, are quite required and demanded for. The Russian banks are now interacting with the African banks. That's quite important because there are almost no Russian banks where there are branches in Africa, the ones which are necessary in order to localize the Russian entities and to fund the Russian exporters. We have big expectations related to the issue of the Russian e-ruble, We see how our partners from China work in terms of electronic or digital RMB. E-dollar is going to be launched. Bank of Israel said that they're going to launch electronic or digital shekel. We'd like the Russian digital electronic e-ruble give an impetus to the Russian company so that we could use that in order to expand to the African continent. These are the terms and conditions which will be created by the intergovernmental commissions by the Russian government and the Russian parliament for the sake of the Russian business. And it will leapfrog into the African continent. This is something which we rely on. We do believe that the second summit meeting would be different from the first summit meeting between Russia and Africa in terms that major projects are launched in the mining industry and in all other important areas, setting up a totally different foundation for cooperation between Africa and Russia. Thank you so much.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you, Igor. Thank you. I actually see that Mr. Gruzdev is here. Alexei, hello and welcome. I'm not sure if you were here during our previous discussion, but we already discussed Russia-African relationship not once. So at the moment, we are discussing a specific model of our cooperation. We've talked a lot about that already, but in my report, I mentioned that we need to focus on the technological and humanitarian type of model. This is the string that we need to pull and focus on export and export of our services. This will expand our cooperation. So what is your opinion on that? What do you think about this kind of model and proposal? Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Ms. Abramova, thank you for this message. Actually, I concur. I'm 100% with you. I think that our partnership has to be multifaceted and doesn't have to be limited by buy or sell model. It has to be long-term, just like back in the Soviet times, we've been talking about long-term relations similar to these ones. So it wasn't only about aid, it was about different types of support, cultural, humanitarian, educational cooperation. So all of this is very relevant today. And we think technological partnership offers development of competences. This can help us adjust to the new reality and adjust and upgrade our infrastructural projects that we had long before, back in the Soviet times. So it's going to be development on a completely new, on an entirely new level. So I think this kind of format, that was something that we had in mind in the context of the Russia-Africa summit 2 years ago. And my colleagues, previous speakers, have already talked a lot about this. We think it is indeed a breakthrough in our relationship. This is the stage when we have discussed and covered almost all areas, all topics, and as a ministry, speaking about our competences, as a ministry, we're trying to actively implement all those agreements and maintain the format for interaction that we have agreed on. Business mission discussions, roundtables, exhibitions, B2B communication, all that. Speaking about topics and areas for cooperation, we had a look-back analysis done, and we now see that it would be really good to focus on the mining industry for obvious reasons. Technological cooperation, reconstruction, upgrade, renovations, audit, delivery of equipment, possibility to integrate what we already see is there on the African continent. The second part, the second element is transport and logistics, including facilities, airports, railways, docks, shipyards, and delivery of equipment, including helicopters, rolling stocks, cars, trucks, you name it. So here we can talk about design, renovation, maintenance, and creating new capacities. For example, when we talk about railways, it may be maintenance for rolling stocks and trains. So we have to talk about all that and many other things. There's one more area, perhaps. That'll be energy sector and fuel. We can offer technology, we can offer products, pipes, for example, to be used in oil and gas industry. We have to offer quite a lot. We can help develop different areas, hydro energy, heating power plants, and renewables. Some time ago, we've been discussing energy parks with a number of countries. One other very important thing is something that our ministry focuses on: mineral fertilizers, scientific research, agriculture, and many other elements, different fertilizers that can be applied and used in different areas. So this is all very important. It has always been like that, but for the last year and a half, no meeting goes without discussing pandemic and its negative impact on the economic development of our countries, on social well-being, health of our citizens. But of course, it's another impetus for science development. And as for biotechnology, Russia has made a very big step forward, and we've been always there to help our friends and partners. We've been delivering medical supplies and vaccine. Our vaccine has been registered in 19 countries now, and we'll be doing all we can, all in our power, to satisfy the needs of our colleagues and friends in Africa in particular. So with all other proposals that we have, we'd be happy to share this online, offline. We'd be willing to share our presentations, and actually it'll be really great to see all that with your own eyes. This Minaprom exhibition will take place in Yekaterinburg, 5 to 8th July. Yekaterinburg. So this exhibition will take place, and we'll be there. I know there are some restrictions related to flights. However, you're more than welcome to come if you can. And there'll be a business program for our guests and participants, and you'll be able to see what we have to offer with your own eyes. For those who won't be able to join us, we plan to arrange for a field exhibition, what we call it. It's going to be a field mission, and next year we intend to arrange something like that, a similar event in Nigeria. At the moment we are discussing the dates. It will be a really good thing for all of us. So just once again, let me express my gratitude. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share our experience, what we have to offer. Thank you for your interest. And I wish all of us a really fruitful conference. I know you'll be working together for several days, and I know that we have distinguished participants from different areas. So we're looking forward to seeing and hearing from you and the results of your conference. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Alexei. Thank you. Actually, you've been very specific. Well, 5 areas, if I'm not mistaken, for short term, for long term. So probably most relevant one is going to be healthcare, agriculture, infrastructure, energy infrastructure, mining, digital. Digitalization is very important in African market. As for the digitalization development pace is ahead of many other countries. So now I would like to give floor to Evgeny Primakov. He's head of Россотрудничество, and he is head of the Public Council of the RAPF Secretary. I'm sure you've been following our discussion, and you probably saw and heard how much attention we were paying to humanitarian education. I know that ever since you joined us, you've joined this position, you've done already quite a lot. I have a rather provocative question. Speaking about humanitarian area, we've been working together and quite a lot, substantially, with African countries through many organizations and funds. We are spending billions of dollars. That's what we invest in this. What do you think? In humanitarian area, do we need to keep it up that way? Do we need to continue this work using international organizations, or should we focus more on bilateral cooperation? Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Abramova. I wouldn't call it a provocative question. I would call it a very relevant question that I'm going to talk about. That's exactly what I had in mind. So at the moment, I see myself on the screen and it looks all green for some reason. But speaking about statistics, and I'm not talking about the United States or China, Turkey, India. However, we need to revisit statistics that we have. Because as for the foreign debt, this is international cooperation as well. This is part of it. As for trading preferences, that too, that is also part of this framework. Huge investments vows go to development institutes that belong to UN and other international organizations. I think we need to differentiate between all that. We're doing quite a lot to support UNDP and many other UN agencies and organizations working on the African continent, because they're doing quite a lot to improve the quality of life of the local population. However, at the moment, there are a lot of ongoing quasi projects that's what I call them, because when we're doing something, when we, for example, training agricultural specialists, someone else, we're not doing this directly. And some organizations are not doing this directly, but using the resources of international organizations. So perhaps for the sake of logistics and for the sake of many other things and elements, what we call last mile, this is inevitable because not everywhere we have partners that we can rely on. Not everywhere we have an opportunity to deliver vaccine from COVID-19. However, if we talk about this comfort zone, that we're going to stay there, and what we have in mind, there'll be nothing new. So we need to look for partner organizations, and we need to once again revisit this. And our organization, Россотрудничество, is working on that as we speak. So we're going to rely more on the element that we consider to be the core value. So we are going to rely more on interaction with the local NGOs, this sector. Yes, we are doing quite a lot, but not everything has been accounted for. But all is well, thank God. However, when we talk about money distribution, that's what major players can afford. And let's be honest, many African partners see this as, well, not the only source, but a priority. So that's why they're asking for grant subsidies. So this is not one of our strongest sides. So what we could do, we could engage our African partners and work on joint projects. What Mr. Morozov was talking about, he was talking about promoting business, the synergy. This is very dear to us. I was really happy to hear that. And I really hope that we are going to work on that. And we had discussion about this with Mr. Khrushchev. We talked about how humanitarian aspect should go together with promoting our goods, products, trading, and other things. So here we need to work more with the other sectors, corporations. Not once you've mentioned education, and we do need this education to be not so much in Russia. When we bring students from Africa to study in Russian universities, we definitely need to do that. There'll be more students. We have more quotes now, but we need educational platforms on the African continent. And it's not going to be something general. It has to be something that is in demand. For example, in platforms for engineers or IT or healthcare. At the same time, we need to realize that they are promoting Russian companies. They are helping develop their business there. So the more projects like that we're going to have, the more we talk to other partners, saying, let's have school here and university and institute there, I think it's going to be much better. We don't want to waste money just for the sake of money or for the sake of doing something. We want to see the effect. We want to see some specific, concrete, feasible results. And as for the economy, or economics of the African continent. I mean, I'm not talking about priorities. It's a combination. It's a mixture of the two elements. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Evgeny. Thank you. Indeed, this is a very important area. And what you've said, through education, we'll be able to promote our technology and interaction and cooperation, because what we have, the experience that we have, that we had in the Soviet times, those elites formed back then, they're very positive, and they have really good attitude towards their country. So plenty of Africans study in China, in Western universities, and it means that they're not the elite that has, well, I would say, that has the kind of attitude that would lead us to think that they really would enjoy working with Russia. However, we have options. And as for humanitarian cooperation, training personnel, highly skilled experts, this is key for promoting our goods and products and technologies, and for building a different kind of attitude towards our country at this particular stage. I'm not sure what is next. We are waiting for the foreign minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo's speech, but I'm not sure if he's online. But at the moment, I would like to give floor to Mr. Sultanov, Alexander Sultanov, Chairman of the Association of Economic Cooperation with African States. Alexander, we've been talking about personnel training, and as far as I know, at the moment, the association is currently entertaining the idea of educational trips for African students. I think this is also very interesting and is linked to humanitarian areas. So perhaps you could talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Abramo. Let me start exactly from that. You know that Russian business, which already is working in Africa, certainly is very much interested in having an opportunity to be backed, to be supported by the local workforce. And hence we have an initiative which you have mentioned, Ms. Abramova. Hence is our project which we're implementing along with Gazprom Bank. We are studying the needs, and if necessary, we will select the African students who are studying in the Russian universities and offer them an opportunity to have an internship in African nations, especially where there is a need for such specialists. It should be mentioned that the Russian business, the Russian companies, showed a lot of interest to such a project. But on the topic which we have raised, and on the topic of this conference, first of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to the Russian African Studies Institute for their kind invitation. And it's crucial for us for several reasons. First of all, Ms. Abramova is a member of the Supervisory Council of the RAS and is involved in the development of our strategies. Secondly, the African Studies Institute is helping us to hold a number of events, such as webinars, televised seminars and workshops and other activities, which always enjoy admiration among the members of our community. Most importantly, something we admire about that conference is, again, your concise analysis, your concise focus and predictions are very much needed for practical implementation of the objectives which we are facing. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Association of Economic Cooperation with African States. Speak about the midterm perspective, certainly. We are now preparing for the second summit meeting, Russia-Africa. And certainly the conference would go beyond these events, and the practical activities implied by that conference is more important than the summit to be held next year. We have to speak about the long run, about the long-term strategy. In that context, those who are working for the sake of the Russian-African cooperation, we value the conclusions to be made by that conference about the general tendencies in the social and economic spheres on the continent, especially in the context of the pandemic. Sadly, we are keen to find out how these tendencies may come true in the zones where certain regional cooperation associations are operational. This is what is clearly important for all of us. And with your help, we'd like to develop our tactics and strategy for cooperation amid tougher competition. Now that we see some external stakeholders being present in Africa, that's a very difficult objective, and the proper analysis offered by the analysis of the situation at hand offered by the scientists is something we can be backed by. You are the ones to offer some niches in the market, and the summary of your conclusions of your results following the work of the conference would be very much interesting. And that's about some practical steps, and this is something which you touched upon in your pitch. What are we going to do next in terms of the practical work? Are we going to look for some vacant, empty spaces, trying to throw a fishnet in a hope to find something, or we're going to focus on certain regions or certain countries? Just like one of the members of association offered at the meeting with the diplomatic academy, probably we could set up a pool of certain stakeholders, Russian stakeholders, which would entail a broad range of small and medium-sized enterprises to follow in these footsteps. There are lots of risks in this continent, and the one which we cannot but take into consideration, that's the political and military situation, the rise of terrorism and everything accompanied by that. And the chances are no chances of intergovernmental or interstate conflicts. That remains a challenge. Let me say a few words about our association to conclude. The association was set up at the initiative of the Russian-Africa Partnership stakeholders. So we are working for more than 6 months. We are working in close cooperation with the Russian Foreign Ministry and with the support of the Executive Office of the Russian President. The association includes such major companies as V Holding, Transmash Holding, Chita PZ, Chelyabinski, pipe mills, the United Metal Works Company, Gazprom Bank, Uralvagonmash. So these are the companies which either already are operational in Africa, or they are eager to accede to the African market. I must say that apart from those who are already members of our association, we are partnering with other companies, especially the ones which are working in the area of ICTs. That's a sphere which acquires more and more importance, more and more significance in a number of African nations. We are developing partnership relations with various stakeholders and African nations. We are supported by the Russian embassies in Africa, and we're supported by African embassies in Russia, which is clearly quite useful. Certainly, we are getting prepared for the upcoming St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, something which we discuss proactively with Ms. Abramova. This is when we're going to announce a number of projects which will be implemented by our association. I would note 2 projects. One I already touched upon. We made substantial propositions to set up a direct investment fund to facilitate the work of the Russian business in Africa. That's a very serious and important question. The business is always putting in question mark, is always offering this question to us and to certain entities and agencies. The structure of the fund has already been developed, and as far as we know, it's been considered by the public authorities. Another project and this is a project which is being discussed and promoted, setting up a single environment between Russia and Africa with the contribution of Roscongress. So the concept has already been developed, and we are setting up a single portal for the Russian-African cooperation, offering certain services for the Russian and African users. And to conclude my remarks, let me say that we see the rise of many events and activities, and it makes us confident that we will meet the objective put forward by Mr. Putin following the results of the very first Russian-African summit meeting. The scope of humanitarian and economic ties with Africa and African continent and Russia will be extended. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your detailed and multi-layer contribution. In your keynote pitch, you spoke about ICT. That's crucial, as ICT play a crucial role, a vital role in our life, and sometimes this is the reality which reacts to the information rather than vice versa. I'd like to thank TASS agency, news agency, for the opportunity to hold this meeting here in their premises, and saying that I would like to pass the floor for a video address to Director General of the Russian News Agency, TASS, head of the media coverage working group of the RAPF Secretariat, Mr. Mikhailov. Good afternoon, dear participants in this conference. For the Russian News Agency TASS, that's an honor and privilege to host the 15th International Conference of Africanists, Destinies of Africa in the Modern World. Africa has always been a focal place for TASS News Agency. Our news correspondents have always been there. We would be telling about the life in Africa. We inform the people about the assistance provided to the people of that nation. We covered the armed conflicts in Nigeria, Somalia, and others. TASS did a lot for the maturity of independent mass media in that continent. We offered necessary equipment and sent our experts there. TASS is now interacting with our counterparts in Africa, making sure that people could have access to unbiased information and news about the situation in the world. In Sochi, we held one of the most important events of the summit meeting, the Forum of News Agencies of Russia and Africa. It has been unprecedented, and the meeting of the leading heads of the leading news agencies with Mr. President of the Russian Federation somehow invested an important dimension to that meeting. We are actively cooperating with Maghreb Arab press, and we are supporting close relations with many news agencies. Unfortunately, COVID-19 undermined our plans, so the heads of news agencies Cameroon, Ghana, and Congo had to delay their visits to Russia to the headquarters of TASS News Agency. We suspended the exchange of our expert programs, But as soon as the pandemic situation improves, we'll get back to our plans. We are getting prepared for the second summit meeting between Russia and Africa, which is scheduled for 2022. We'll have a nice opportunity to exchange views on a broad range of questions and to highlight new areas of our cooperation. I do hope that this summit will be held in Africa, as was planned for in Sochi. Dear colleagues, I wish you fruitful work. Bye. That was a very important contribution, in my opinion, delivered by a representative of the Russian Leading News Agency. And the fact that TASS is now part of the Russian-African cooperation, and probably it may translate into a broad range of reporters, strongholds present in Africa. I remember that during the Soviet times, we would have a TASS office in almost every African nation. I'm confident that Africa is a very important strategic partner. Reaching the goals of its development, including the successful development of the Russian economy, attaining these goals won't be possible without Africa. And saying that, I'm not sure whether Mr. Mikhnevich is with us. He is Managing Director for Multilateral Cooperation and Integration of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. I'm here. Yes, I can hear you very well. And this is with great pleasure I will pass the floor to you. I remember our dialogue at Russia-Africa Summit, and I remember clearly the interest which was aroused by a session moderated by Mr. Shokin. How many questions were asked, how the Russian business can get back to Africa? What are the areas of cooperation out there? What are the hurdles and problems out there on that way? I do think that Mr. Mikhnevich, you will speak not only on behalf of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, but on behalf of all the entrepreneurs, telling us about the expectations from the African business, what Russia may do, what else the Russian scientists may do to make sure that it's convenient for the Russian business to work in Africa. Thank you so much for such a nice opportunity to speak in front of you. Thank you so much for your warm introduction. I see some prophecy in your words. As Ms. Abramova took off my tongue what I wanted to tell you. For the Russian business and for the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, Africa is not just one of the areas for cooperation, but this is where we may achieve a big growth, have the biggest growth potential. If we look at the structure of our trade, Russia accounts for about 2% of African inputs, and Russia exports only 0.4% to Africa. I'm sure that our bilateral opportunities are not used fully, but our cooperation evolves quite dynamically, quite positively. Before, 10 years ago, we would speak about several percentage points on or split of the percentage points, both in terms of exports and inputs. But now we are increasing our investments, and more than $20 billion are to be invested in Africa. What is important, we not only have to understand what we may give to our African partners, but we have to understand their expectations. Something which we are neglectful, not mindful, being guided only by our own opportunities and our interests. It's very important to study the structure of the economy, structure of consumption in African nations. It's already been said that Africa is a very young continent with very young community. There is a big deal of the youth in the structure of population, and certainly this has a say on the consumption model. What I'd like to note, the Russian business not only cooperates with Africa, making money, making profit, but also it is responsible for the development of that region. Russian business not only creates jobs and pays taxes, thus contributing to the development of the region, but we try to make an input into the sustainable development. Let me mention one of the documents drafted under the Japanese chairmanship within G20. We prepared a number of projects helpful to attain SDGs. And this set of documents brought about a number of best cases from Russia and from Africa, such countries, South Africa, Lesotho, Malawi, Sudan, Benin, and others, to name a few.
I'm talking about participation of Russian business and local communities and societies that trying to solve some issues related to health, agriculture, and many others. So a lot has already been done, and I would like to say that such development shows that our business is prepared to hear what the region actually needs, which is very important. One other thing that I wanted to mention, there's another opportunity to work with our partners on the African continent and the market for third countries. It is possible both on a multilateral and bilateral basis. Russia is dominating in certain areas. We're talking about 95% of trading. That's trading with our country, but that's what used to be. At the moment, the situation is changing. The more and more products and goods are coming from our partner countries, Belarus and many others. So we see that we can do a lot to strengthen the position of our companies, and we can develop our initiatives and projects further. This has to be in line with the interests of our African partners. We have plenty of opportunities to deliver goods and products from the African continent. And there are some preferences and there are some trading preferences. This has been created quite some time ago, back in the Soviet times. And as for import, the special customs duty benefits that we can enjoy. And I think we have one issue related to communication and awareness. In this regard, we considered the right thing to do to focus more on entry points. How can we interact more so that African companies could enjoy this and so that we could provide what they need? I can't help but mention the integration topic. African Union and Eurasian Economic Union. This process has been going pretty well so far, and our colleagues are actively collaborating with our colleagues from the African Union. Negotiations are underway regarding free trading. However, we still need to do quite a lot, but we have a huge potential. We can do much more together. And I'm talking about Strategic Agenda 2063. I think this is one of the most important agendas for the African Union. This will improve the quality of life in the region a great deal, and more opportunities will be created for developing our relationship and cooperation. As for specifics that needs to be taken into account, no doubt we need to realize that some things are not stable. There's a huge dependency on feedstock. On the one hand, African countries are interested in creating production lines on their own territory with higher products with higher added value to overcome the resource curse. And at the same time, we need to work more with our partners. And we know that there are some very reliable partners, such as us, for example. In conclusion, I would like to say that our session that we had, and mentioned by you in the beginning, this session, this event, will be followed by many more. And really hope that pandemic will go away and we'll be able to meet each other face to face in person. So all those recommendations that were presented in the course of our session in 2019, I'm convinced that they're still very relevant. And we see that the priorities, the relevance, consolidation of all our efforts and other elements and factors, it's all there. And academic society and community and business community, all of them are interested in the next steps. And it is not always possible to capture the 100% synergy. However, without the expert community and without our esteemed colleagues, experts and specialists, this won't be possible. No doubt we need to seize all the potential that is there. We need to launch initiatives of our own. And we need to do this in order to improve efficiency and availability and accessibility to what is available in Africa. Some time ago, the head of the Russian delegation, during one of the events that took place in Kenya, mentioned this too. But where is a will, there is a way. Without the intention, without knowing each other, without learning more about each other, without investigating what can be done, without this, all of this would be impossible. Thank you, Sergey. And on my part, I would agree. More close cooperation between the scientific community and the business would be a brilliant idea. And development of strategies, business strategies on the African continent. This has a very promising future. Myself, I think that this is very practical, and I think that Russian science, it has fundamental knowledge and experience, so it is quite capable of giving this an element of application. I mean, this is really practical. This is of utter importance. Science matters. And as for Russia-Africa relations, those scientific approaches have to become more practical. And we want this to be more beneficial from all standpoints to our country and to the African continent. Thank you very much for your report. According to our agenda, and we were supposed to have a foreign minister from Congo speech, but once again, due to some technical issues, they had some issues related to electricity. He was unable to join us. So for 3 days, we'll be working together. So maybe there will be a chance of him joining us finally. But technology is technology, and we'll be talking more about this too. And energy, electricity is of utter importance to the African continent. So now I would like to give floor to Dr. Benedict Rama from African Bank. Before the Russia-Africa summit, there was a huge conference, and this bank was one of the major operators and one of the major participants of this Russia-Africa summit. He was part of this event in Sochi. He talked about the financial mechanisms of our cooperation, so I would like to give floor to him. Mr. Benedict Rama, we have a video address.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, a special representative of the President of the Russian Federation for Middle East and Africa, His Excellency Lutundula Apala, Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, His Excellency Paba Saleh Mahamat, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Cameroon to the Russian Federation and Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps, Her Excellency Professor Ian Abo Sarah, Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology at the African Union Commission, honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful to the leadership of the Institute for African Studies of the Russian Academy of Sciences and our friends at Russian Rus Congress Foundation for the kind invitation to participate in this conference. In today's highly competitive knowledge economy, the Institute of African Studies is uniquely positioned to foster a stronger alliance between the Russian and African research and academic communities and transfer of knowledge and technologies essential to Africa's economic transformation. This collaboration is germane as Africa seeks to leverage new technologies to leapfrog the major impediment to its economic progress and accelerate agricultural and industrial transformation. This conference on the theme, Destinies of Africa in the Modern World, is holding at a time when Africa, like most other economies, is making a slow but steady recovery from the debilitating crisis of 2020. In Africa, the path to recovery and sustainable economic progress is well defined, and the ambitious goals are achievable. Having learned the bitter lessons of lack of preparedness for the COVID-19 pandemic and over-reliance on others for health security, all African governments have come to the realization that the future of Africa lies not with external actors, but within Africa itself. The future of Africa lies in Africa. Partnerships are essential, but the roadmap for the future must be mapped and owned by Africans. We will no longer be numbed by the drunkenness of over-reliance on others, because others have their own problems to worry about. The immediate priority for almost all governments on the continent is to vaccinate a sizable proportion of its population, sufficient enough to attain herd immunity. The African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends a 60% coverage for Africa. This is most critical if the continent is to attract international and private capital to trigger economic recovery. It is now clear to all that vaccine plan is a post-pandemic economic recovery plan. In the spirit of the emerging self-reliance, Africa did not hinge all its vaccination hopes on donors. We quickly realized that in an environment of scramble over scarce COVID-19 vaccines, that the principle of self-preservation will trump the best of humanitarian instincts. We have to join the scramble with our own resources. While the support of Gavi's COVAX is most welcome and highly commendable, their effort will vaccinate only approximately 27% of the African population by 2022. Africa has to find enough vaccine doses to achieve 60% coverage. Afreximbank, mandated by the African Union, is working through the AU-created Africa Vaccine Acquisition TASS team, also called AVAT, to bridge this gap. Afreximbank approved a $2 billion advanced procurement commitment facility to provide guarantees and funding to enable Africa to source vaccines. Through this mechanism, Africa has secured 400 million vaccine doses for itself. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as you may be aware, at the beginning of this year, African countries commenced trading under the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. The AfCFTA will see a gradual elimination of tariffs across 90% of tariff lines over the next 5 to 10 years. As we gradually begin to exit the ravages of the pandemic, it is the AfCFTA that will form the platform on which Africans can begin to build back. Africa is not and cannot be oblivious of the intricate interconnections and interrelations among countries as it pursues self-determination and economic independence. In a globalized world economy, the AfCFTA throws up several opportunities and a clear framework for engagements with the global community. A large interconnected African market calls for the development, expansion, and in most cases, upgrading of transport infrastructure. For instance, investments are required for the development of the Cape to Cairo road network. There are needs for railway networks to carry goods across transit borders at least cost. Need to expand investments in sea and airport infrastructure. The need for technologies to facilitate the generation, transmission, and distribution of energy efficiently. The need for new technologies to build light and heavy manufacturing industries, and so on. The Russian Federation is one unique partner of Africa, bound by a shared history and aspirations for the future. While trade and investment flows between the Russian Federation and Africa remains limited, the emerging opportunities created by the AfCFTA present new scope for a reinvigoration of the historical, political, trade, and economic relations between our peoples. Afreximbank is working with Russian institutions to make this a reality. For instance, Afreximbank is working with the Russia Export Center and Russian entities on the implementation of projects in a wide range of sectors and industries, including the financial industry, the mining industry, chemicals and the fertilizers, steel manufacturing, energy, railways, and others. Afreximbank could serve as a conduit for major Russian entities seeking such opportunities in Africa. Afreximbank provides twinning opportunities, country risk, investment and contract availability guarantees, and other forms of risk cover to investors interested in African markets, and also introduce Russian investors to African markets. Through events organized together with Rus Congress, we are drawing attention of investors to the trade and investment opportunities and creating the platform for networking among Africa and Russian businesses. Afreximbank was a strong partner in organizing the first ever Russia-Africa Forum in 2019, which attracted all African states to Sochi at the highest levels. But the prospects are bright for Africa. Genuine partnerships remain critical to realizing the continental aspirations. Through constructive collaboration and continuous engagements at the political and corporate levels, Russia can help Africa harness the gains from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I wish us all a successful conference. Thank you for listening.
Спасибо большое, господин
Thank you so much. Mr. Rama concluded our today's discussion, and his presentation he noted the directions which were mentioned today, the cooperation in the area of healthcare infrastructure, setting up transport infrastructure, power generation, agriculture, fertilizers, digitalization. I think that what we spoke about is that we have to develop our cooperation with Africa the way that it is interesting for Africans. Our cooperation is a two-way street. I do think that all the participants in today's discussion only stress that. I got a note that unfortunately the Foreign Minister of the Republic of the Congo will not be actually able to speak up because the whole of the government is involved in mitigating the consequences of the volcanic eruption. But I think that the development of cooperation between Russia and Africa won't be possible without scientific support, without modern technologies, without knowledge of the African continent, without knowing its specific features, without knowing the whole of the diversity typical of the African continent and its 10,000s of peoples. We still have a number of, we still have some time, and if their excellencies, ambassadors of the African nations are ready to say a few words. We have an ambassador of Tunisia and a diplomat from Nigeria. So if you want to say something, yeah, most welcome. As far as the excellencies are not ready to join us, so I will say some concluding remarks. I think that this conference was clearly very important, very interesting. We said that the modern development is not possible without science, very diverse science, which would touch upon almost all the aspects of our development. Science which, being based on the fundamental knowledge, would define the strategy of our interaction. Strategy of the development between Russia and Africa. In future, our countries will become pronounced centers of the international development. We are very glad that our African colleagues, our African friends attach so much importance and significance to this conference. I'm grateful to the African participants. I'm grateful to His Excellency, Mr. Pabasale, doyen of the African Corps, diplomatic corps, who took part in our conference. I'd like to thank all the hearing officials. Today's knowledge, including the scientific knowledge, becomes a very important factor for the development, and I hope that the conference would be successful in the sense that we'll define various directions for the development of the African continent. I wish us a very successful further discussion. I'd like to thank everyone who helped us to hold that event, Roscongress, TASS News Agency, all our fellows, everyone who helped to prepare for that meeting. I wish you every success, and let me congratulate you on the upcoming Day of Africa. There is an African proverb or saying, the road is only a beginning of the journey. And I hope that our road would be successful and very fruitful. Thank you so much.